Can everybody hear me? Okay, there. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Um, it is January. Thank you for coming for Makeup Day. Today we have Josh from George Brown ESL, who's going to do the territorial acknowledgement. There you go. Come on.
Great. Thank you, Joan.
I don't know what to do with that.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here in person and as well online. George Brown College, as with the North York Community House, is located on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and other Indigenous peoples who have lived here over time. We are grateful to share this land as treaty people who learn, work, and live in the community with each other. Under Colleges and Institutes Canada, which is a national membership of colleges, institutes, and polytechnics from across the country, George Brown College is a signee of the Indigenous Education Protocol from 2015. And I'd like to share a few examples of ways in which a post-secondary like George Brown continues to work towards fulfilling its commitments in alignment with the TRC calls to action. Led by our Indigenous Initiatives team, the college offers a range of support such as Indigenous mentorship program, dedicated advising and counseling, as well as guidance for financial aid, scholarships, and awards. And while they serve Indigenous students from across all programs at the college, they also play an important role in educating the broader college community through workshops and a Knowledge Keeper series that creates opportunities for students and employees to reflect and engage. Additionally, the college's Office of Anti-Racism, Equity, and Human Rights offers to all employees a series of self-directed resources on decolonization and indigenization to those seeking to advance systemic change in their roles in academic spaces. Just quickly, at a department level, so within the Center for Preparatory and Liberal Studies, where my department, the School of ESL and Immigrant Education, is located, recently piloted an international exchange between George Brown Indigenous students and Maori students from the Nelson Marlborough Institute of Technology in New Zealand, enhancing opportunities to share local and global Indigenous experiences, as well as supporting the most underrepresented students who participate in global mobility activity. The department is also responsible for teaching elective courses such as Indigenous Worldviews, Indigenous Peoples in the Media, Indigenous Education in a Canadian Context, and Introduction to Indigenous Studies, which is a course open to all George Brown students, including being a required course for all community and social service worker, child and youth care, and dental hygiene students at the college. Though these are but a few examples, there's still a lot of work and learning to do, and very much look forward to today's session with Madeline. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to Joan.
First one I'm doing this, it's so funny. We're super lucky today, but we're super lucky. I say this every single time, right? And I'm always right? No, it's true. So Madeline, how do I say this? You know, there's people who just do the work, and there's people who run around and talk about doing the work. Like Madeline's you're never gonna see a picture of her with a giant check, you know, to so-and-so. Well, I mean, you know, but I mean, like, but she's quietly there doing the work, doing the work, doing the work. So it's kind of interesting. Like, we all know her family's story. It's pretty well documented. And she's going to go just a little bit further and tell her what happened from her perspective. And, you know, like what this whole situation, this colonization did from there, you know, from where she is, because it's somewhat different than what you may have seen on TV. Does that sound too TMZ? And now today, no, I mean, you know, get the real story. So no, I mean, it really is very important. She's the child of a 60 Scoop person. And the thing about 60 Scoop people is like, we have no idea really about our identity. So when you think about, like if you came here and you had absolutely, if you didn't know your language, but you had to learn another language now. I mean, there's just so much stuff that's tied up with identity. It's really actually, you know, at first I thought, well, loss of culture and identity, like how can that be a big deal? Oh, it's a big deal. So I think we're going to talk about like she's going to talk about, Madeline's going to talk about reclaiming her identity and taking all that back and all that wonderful stuff that comes with that. So, so yeah, I think that's everything. So thank you, and here you go.
Nyawa. Sego. Hello. So I have really been wrestling with what I'm going to say today because, like, here's the real secret. This is the first time I am telling my story in this form. You know, I was a contributor to my dad's documentary. I've been on TVO, The Agenda, talking about intergenerational trauma. Sound bites are really easy, but to sit down and look you all in the eyes, and my dad, who might be here, that could be challenging, and to share my perspective is new for me. So welcome, everyone. Join me on this little journey. So again, my name is Madeline Wilson Shaw. I am Haudenosaunee, I'm Mohawk, and my mother is Scottish. And so growing up in Hamilton with, the secret that loomed over our entire life, my dad being a 60s scoop survivor. For those of you who don't know his story, it is documented in a book and a documentary called Beautiful Scars, and a play. Guy likes to tell that story. It's a good one. Um, But it's a really important story, not because it's his, but because it captures a very specific experience for Indigenous people. You know, we are all familiar with the big with residential schools and missing MMIW G2S, and we talk about 60 scoop. But to understand that experience and the experience of all of those atrocities is different, and to feel it is different. And so with my dad's story, what's missing is how it impacts the next generation and how it impacts in the context of intergenerational trauma, but where I find my place in the story. And so as the child of a 60s scoop survivor, I have a kind of a safe place in it. So I grew up with the experience. I grew up with the effects of what my dad lived through. But I have like this safe, it's not my story directly. So my role in my family was different. And when I was 16 years old, I was telling my mom a story. I was really upset. I went to a predominantly wealthy, predominantly white high school. And at this point, I didn't know that I was Indigenous myself, but I knew I didn't fit in. I'll tell you that right now. And so when I was 16, I was telling my mom this story, and this is a challenging story because it was me witnessing at a party um, a young guy experiencing racism. So, you know, some tropes were being, they had a name for him. He was Anishinaabe, he is Anishinaabe. They had a name for him. It was very racist, and it played into some tropes. And I was communicating, like I was telling my mom, like, I'm so upset. I'm 16, right? So I'm sure there's like a bit of an attitude to it. Like, I'm so upset, but I'm so upset that this is something that I witnessed and experienced, and I don't know how to handle it, and I don't know why it's sitting with me, and it had been weeks since I had experienced this. And my mom, I don't know what came over her, but she said to me, "You know, Madeline, I don't know what to say, but it's very likely that you're Native too." I remember exactly where I was, we were in the car. I remember the intersection we were sitting at. Like, it's like this moment of, you know, what does that mean? Like, how is this possible? And the irony is because I was like this very imaginative dreamer little girl in my own world. And I remember going down into my family basement, and my grandmother, not my grandmother, and my dad's actual mother lived with us at the time. And I remember going down to the basement. They had this like really cool old trunk. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to look for a family secret." Like, just making up Nancy Drew's storylines in my head. There was one. Just dig a little deeper in that trunk. And so when my mom told me this, I like 16, I don't know how this fits into my life. But I knew that I wanted to know. And so what you learn in life is that you're on your own, and that your journey is it's a solo mission. And I was, I was not a bad kid, but I knew how to complicate my life. I'll just say that. And at some point, my path led me to changing high schools. And when I changed high schools, I went to a school that was downtown Hamilton. And in Hamilton, there's a high urban Indigenous population. And as a result, there was a program in the school. It was called the NYCH program, and it's Native Youth Advancement within Education. And it's essentially like a coaching, it's to support Native youth being successful in high school. And they provided cultural opportunities to engage with culture and teachings and meet elders and learn how to make, tacos with fry bread, which, if there's one takeaway, holy, game changer in the snack front. But even though I didn't know for certain, I knew I wanted to be there. And I knew that if I was going to put on my Nancy Drew hat again, and I was going to find my way to understand what this meant for me and what it meant for my family, I was going to have to do it on my own. And that program, it was partnered with the Friendship Center, and it still exists. It's a fantastic program in the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. That program was my first solo, independent young person. I think I was probably 17 at this point. An opportunity to engage with what it meant to be Mohawk, with teachings. I remember the elder coming in. He passed away recently. I remember the elder coming in and teaching us about the seventh generation. And I remember these moments of feeling like there was something that I needed. Now, I am a rule follower, like probably a bit debilitating in some. What does my dad say? He goes, "I'll never commit a crime with you." So, but so I didn't wear it. Like I didn't put it on. I didn't wear a flag. I was really humble in my approach to accessing culture, because I didn't want to take on anything that wasn't mine. But I knew that if it was mine, I wanted to be ready. I wanted to know all the things, and it's interesting on your journey, everyone's journey, whether or not you are actively missing your identity, or whether or not you know these pieces of you. We're all on a journey towards wholeness, that feeling of whole. And you have to, how do I say this it was mine, and I don't want to sound so I sound so dramatic. I don't mean to sound so dramatic. So I left it for a while because I didn't have, I was pushing my dad. And this is where I want to go with this. Thank you, Brain, for chiming in here. You look to the people, you look to your elders, you look to your parents, you look to your grandparents, your teachers, the people in authority positions around you for bravery, for guidance, for the path. It's like there's this expectation that those people have the path for you. And sometimes those people don't have the tools. They don't have the ability, in the instance of I had always this feeling, it's like, I need my dad to go and ask and find out. I need him to do that so that I'm allowed. When I went to university, there was this little corner, like literally a little corner with a half wall, and there was a medicine wheel, and it was an effort. And it was an effort to create space for Indigenous students. And I remember sitting in there and feeling like I wasn't allowed in there, but wanting to be there and wanting to access these groups, but feeling like I wasn't entitled to this. And that ongoing conflict, that internal conflict, and going back and being mad at my dad why? Like, don't you know? Come on. And you know, trying to manipulate him into going and doing his work. But people don't always have those tools. And this experience for me has taught me patience and kindness when when people don't have those tools. And back to, it's your journey. It's your work to do in your time. So fast forward, I let it go for a while because I don't have it. I don't have the answers. There's no sign of my dad getting those answers for himself. So I let it go and I live my life. And now I'm, 19 and doing whatever 19-year-olds do. And then I'm 20 and 21. And it's always sitting there in the back of my head. And it's always there with me. And as I start to go out into the world and experience the world, I am carrying these intrinsic values of what it means to be an Indigenous person without even knowing it. Community, social justice, like all of these pieces, they start to bleed into my life. And I'm living the way I want to live. And so I get married, I have children, not my partner who's here today. For those of you who are here in this building, because I'm just remembering that there are people on the Zoom. Hello. And I have children. And I'm still trying in my way without that piece like that. I don't know what to call it, like not a sword but the piece that kind of makes me feel like I'm allowed. I don't have it, but I'm still like buying the books for my kids, creating access points of understanding and connection. And my spouse is undermining me in this journey. He's telling my children different things. When the day came that my dad found out he was adopted, when that piece landed, the piece I had been missing landed, I was like, let's go. Let's do, I was ready. I was ready. It was like, okay, this is what I had been preparing for. I had been, doing this work so that when the time came, I would be ready, because I didn't know. I didn't know until recently that what I was doing was trying to heal my kids, trying to heal myself, trying to heal my dad. And, still wearing this sense of doubt or imposter syndrome, my own, the internalized imposter. My experience isn't my experience isn't a real experience. My experience isn't important. And someone, back to the household situation, I don't want to throw him under the bus, and that's not what this is. But it was an aha moment for me, where he told our children that they are not Mohawk, they are Hamiltonians. And I took it in and I was like, okay, so I'm going to have to do it over here. That relationship ended, obviously. And someone else in my life, someone else really close to me in my life, said, well, you're not really Native, though. And that one makes me want to cry, because when you unpack those words, I have a whole chapter on that one sentence and the connotation behind every single word. I realized that this would be a fight, that this was going to be a fight. And so, my journey continued, and I engage with the Friendship Center and try and find opportunities for culture. I ended up working at an organization, an Indigenous-led organization, and I was at a health and wellness resilience conference. It was to mark Truth and Reconciliation Day. and an elder from my family's home community of Ganawage was up, and he was speaking, and he said, everything we need to heal as people is in our language. And it was that moment where I realized my next step is learning my language. People can't take my language from me once I have it, right? They took it from me. They took it from my dad. They took it from my grandmother. But once I have it, then I can give it to my kids, and my kids can give it to their kids. And this is healing, and this is joy. So I signed up. I am now a student. I am a language student. I am learning Mohawk. I got an A+ in my course. And it continues. Thank you. It is a land-based language course. It is remarkable. I love to learn. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, but I've always struggled with curriculum, and I've always struggled with the school system. When I will stand here and I can tell you what I'm not. I'm not an educator. I'm not always a very good student. I'm not an academic, but I'm curious and I'm interested and I'm hungry. And so being able to do this course and being able to learn my language in this context has been really an incredible experience, because it is married to our culture as Mohawk people. It is married to the teachings. I skinned a deer, like we did hide tanning. I've been braiding sweetgrass, like the physical connection in that way. As you learn the language and how it interacts with those activities, it's like a piece of myself that I've always been, like 16-year-old me. It's like, there's your answer. That's what you need. It leads itself to some of the other work, the important pieces of these everyday acts of resurgence and resilience that I try to build into my life. So my ability to teach my children language, I read my 3-year-old children's books, and it's the very sleepy bear, the very sleepy Ogwari, there's a wolf, Ogwaho. Like I just am now able to replace the English language with Mohawk. And my son is going to preschool daycare, and they asked me for a list of Mohawk words, because he was saying Ogwari, and they're like, we didn't know what he was saying. I was like, oh, it's bear. So now I'm able to share that with that classroom, and I'm able to give my child the tools that I wasn't given to be able to be proud of his language and to have ownership of himself, right? The other piece that is really a really big piece that we didn't even realize it. Ryan and I did this, and so that's why we're all here. I know it. It's the Decolonial Little Library. We were walking through our neighborhood. We live in a neighborhood in Hamilton. It's kind of I grew up there. It's not what it was when I grew up there, but it's a bougie neighborhood, I'll say. And there are little libraries, and we were out for a walk, and we see these little libraries, and we're like, wouldn't it be cool to do an Indigenous little library? That's how we got the idea. And so sure enough, like I got in Kijiji and I found a little box, an old newspaper box, and we drove to, where did we drive? Atobo? No, not Atobo, somewhere else. Vaughan. We drove to Vaughan to get it from Hamilton, which was like, oh, that is a journey. And so we brought it home and we painted it and we designed the logo. And in the back of our minds is a little bit of fear, right? Because now our house is identified. And it is a message. It's a political message, Decolonial Little Library, right? Like now all of a sudden, okay, well, what does this mean for our household? What does this mean for our children? What does this mean? Like, is this neighbor gonna, you just don't know. Ryan's like, well, I'm always ready for a fight. So it's like, okay. So we put it out, and the first few days, we're like peeking out the window. Like, who's going to come? What are they going to do? We're always waiting for someone to come and kick it over. No one has kicked it over. There's been no fecal matter. There's been no hate. It's been pure love. It's been pure love and engagement at a depth, because that's what people are looking for in our neighborhood, in our community. We have created this accessible entry point to understanding Indigenous storytelling and the Indigenous perspective. And so we exist on donations. We have people bringing their books all the time. There are people are looking for more from us. It's like, I have 4 sons. I will get to this book club soon enough, but it's been really special. And back to, within our household, because my current, I'm a recovering political staffer. I worked for the official opposition for a number of years here in Ontario. I was in the music industry. I've built these careers. I was a real hustler and a workaholic. And so I'm sitting back, really like embracing this journey, and recognizing the work I need to do to continue this healing in my family. And one of the things, this might not connect to the previous thought. I'm just gonna, like I said, this is the first time, so I'm gonna need some tips or feedback. Um, Um, no, I forgot what I was gonna say. How's that? Pardon me? Yeah. No, I don't know what that is. You made me more confused. Yeah. So oh yes, this doesn't connect. When you talk about intergenerational healing and intergenerational wellness, we always call to like the seventh generation, and we're always kind of looking forward. We're looking forward. What I think is really important for me is when I realized that intergenerational healing, it's my parents, it's my grandparents, we go back and forth. And so this goes way back to the beginning of what I was saying in my role in the family, in this space. And I recognize as a Mohawk woman and as someone who has the safety of not being the child of the 60s scoop and not being the mother who lost her baby. I can carry the weight for our family. I read somewhere, probably a meme. I read somewhere, and I wrote it down because it really connected. It said, "Pain continues to move through our families until someone is willing to feel it and heal it." So I know we're supposed to be talking more about education, and I got really emotional. That's what I'm trying to do, and that's the path I'm on now. And so when I was able to, my grandmother died. My dad's mom died in the end of November. So that's why I'm so emotional. I learned what her name meant in Mohawk because of my class. She never knew. She didn't know what her name meant. And I was able to tell her before she died what it meant. And that is really, if you take anything away, we have to give these pieces back to people. It's Gunugly. It means the sweet one. She is the sweet one. And before she died, I had her speaking Mohawk. I had her, it was just goodbye, but I'm a bit of a bully. So this is the other thing. The role is gentle and loving and healing, but it's also like, I'm going to make you do your work. So I was making her say Onagiwahi, which means goodbye. So I think I don't know how long I was speaking for. Maybe not long enough, but I would love to take questions if anyone has any questions. Sorry about the tears. Yes. Yeah. Self-care. Oh, that's good. Okay, so the question is for Zoom. In this journey, how do I make sure that I'm taking time for self-care? Which is, wow, that's such a thoughtful question. Oh my goodness, because I haven't thought about it, I guess. um, it's really interesting because people are talking now, like there's this new focus on what self-care actually means. Like self-care has really been adopted or hijacked by consumerism. And it's become like self-care means drinking this bottle of wine. Self-care means like there's this change in what self-care actually means. When you get to the root of self-care, it really is about like taking the time to care for yourself so you can continue to go out there and do that work. I'm just thinking about what time I have for myself, like not even in a self-deprecating way. I do have 4 sons. My partner and my partner has 2 daughters. There's a lot that goes on in our house. I think that just generally, like those moments that I talked about, sharing language with my kids, sharing language, sharing teachings with my dad, like those do really refill me. Like seeing the wins are ways that it feels like they make, they're like, okay, that's what it's refilling, because one of the pieces I meant to share, and I thought I had my water but I don't, was you do this work for yourself first. So that concept of, and I know I'm all over the place, so I really appreciate everyone staying with me. But that journey that you're on, that solo journey, that this fight is yours, you do it for yourself first. No one's going to do it. Your elders aren't going to do it for you. Your best friend's not going to do it for you. You have to do it. And then once you do it, you get to heal, you get to give, and you get to share with family. And then once you give and you share and you heal and you teach family, it goes to community. And then once it goes to community, it comes back to you. And it's this beautiful cycle of kindness and sharing and teaching and healing. So thank you.
So working at a language school right now, can you maybe speak a bit to well, I guess multi-part question. Where are you taking your language course in Mohawk right now? Is it through a formal center or institute, or is it within community? And also, are there, oh, imagining there's both Indigenous and non-Indigenous participants, speak to maybe, yeah, how that dynamic works, and yeah, if it's also maybe a way for non-Indigenous folks to have deeper engagement, knowing language, vocabulary. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So dry. I'm at McMaster. My teacher is, her name is Galina Dudges Barnes. She goes by Three Sisters Beadwork on Instagram. Her beadwork is stunning. She is a remarkable teacher. And I'm just going to say this, she gave me more confidence in the first term. I'm in my second term with her. In my first term, to be able to speak my language than I have felt like since I was 16. Accepting and warm, because there's a lot of like, there's that guilt or that imposter syndrome. There are non-Indigenous students in the class. And I find that with Mohawk, like I think the Indigenous, like the intro to Indigenous studies, it might be a different experience. But when we're talking about language, like that's a deeper connection. That's someone who's reaching deeper into understanding. And there's this one wonderful guy in our class who, my first day, he's kind of like, he's blonde and kind of bubbly. And I was like, what is this gonna be? Like a bit judgy, I'm sorry, but he's wonderful. And his depth of like, he's really trying to get to the understanding that very few people do. It comes out at some point. He's grown up in the Christian Reformed Church, and he's no longer with the Christian Reformed Church, and he's trying to find his way. And so I think that in terms of learning about culture, it's an incredible opportunity for people to immerse themselves and commit themselves, because it's one thing to sign up for a class, it's another thing to show up, and it's another thing to take the piece of bone and scrape a hide, and try and speak Mohawk in front of a Mohawk, a fluent Mohawk person. So did I answer all of your questions? Was there anything else? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Madeline. Hi. I really appreciate your words, and I do make the connections, regardless of how scattered you think it is or you're expressing. And what I got from is that you're healing perspectives through connecting with identities, with yourself, identity, and within generations. Yes. And that language is a tool for that connection. And I really love that. I resonate with that because I feel like language is a form of symbolic representations, like between people, and narratives. So language is narratives, and the colonization of education or colonization of narratives happened through power. And so the decolonization of narratives is a process of taking back our power. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do think it's about taking back power, but I also feel like it is about defining it for yourself, right? So that is power, but I think the concept of a power structure over it is not necessarily what I like directly align to. It's more about, I'm going to figure out a way to engage with this outside of the structure, and in a way that works for me. I think I think the term decolonizing, my partner is like, you want to talk about decolonization, he knows it. I'm learning, right? So this, I'm a student, and I'm still learning, and I'm learning how to identify when what I'm doing is decolonization. So that's, yeah, I think it's personal power. Yeah.
We also have a question online as well. I'm going to ask Natalia to unmute. You'll be able to hear in the room.
For sure. Thank you. So the question that we have in the chat is Howard, can the journey of reclaiming identity connect with the colonization of education? You want me to repeat? Sorry.
Yes, please repeat. Thank you.
So can the journey of reclaiming identity connect with the colonizing education?
Yeah, of course. I think that already, maybe I'm like, the fact that an institution like George Brown is offering these opportunities is evidence that they're understanding that the status quo of delivering education to people there needs to be more opportunity for people to engage in different ways and in different entry points. And I think that is a huge piece of reclaiming identity. I'm standing here, I'm sitting here right now, and I can tell you that the work I've done through, what would be, formally described as a decolonized approach to language at a post-secondary education institution has deeply contributed to my own personal ability to reclaim my culture and my identity through language. Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I don't know why, I think I needed some credits maybe at Brock to graduate. So I took Cree over the summer, and it was like one of those courses where they tell you not to take anything else. This is what you're going to be doing. And it was also the first summer of COVID, and it was online with Chelsea Val. I mean, I don't know if you know who she is. She wrote that. She's fantastic. So, I mean, it was like, okay, well, I didn't really want to do it, but it was a once in a lifetime chance I was going to have, right? And I have to say, just that, and she got sick. So we were like in 3 weeks. That tiny little bit of language that I had really does reconnect you. I mean, it's well worth like just even like if somebody's out there trying to figure it out, like, I mean, just taking an intro, whatever, or a conversational, whatever. I mean, it's amazing what you can get from knowing what your name is and how to say your name. And, you know, so I mean, it's like important. So, I mean, yeah, just that tiny little bit of language. So, I mean, you're miles ahead of the game, I figure, because your language really is who you are. I mean, you know, like, and people who are newcomers, I'm sure they have this issue all the time, which is trying to learn English when your first language is something else. It's got to be insanely difficult, especially in a new country. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, but language and identity, yeah, they absolutely are. So that's all I was going to say, since nobody else was talking. Does anybody else want?
Did you have a question?
Oh, sorry. Brian.
Is this working?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. First, thanks so much for sharing with us. It's intense to do it in this surrounding, so thanks for giving us that gift. I'm just curious, when you talked about your previous work in politics and the political system, how this journey has impacted how you engage with politics, or if you do in the same way.
Oh, yeah, you want your microphone back?
Well, or I can just be really loud. No.
Not for the people online.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry. Hello, people online. I'm back. Yes, I can talk about that. So, by the time I started working in politics, we were well on our, like, I had found my family in Kahnawake. I had relationships developed. I was like, you know, fully, you know, being myself. And I've always been interested in politics. I've always been engaged. I subscribe to a particular party. I won't get partisan in this room, but it's orange. And 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 so it was really interesting because I ended up being the first. I looked after I was gone. I went and had babies and didn't work on the 22 campaign and was in the safety of the Calypso. And so I found out after that I was the first Indigenous woman to hold a senior leadership role for the official opposition New Democrats, which is pretty big, I think. And I felt pretty, I was like, I've never been the first at anything. Like, I'm normally at the back of the line. I was like, I'll get there when I get there. So that was very cool. But it did come with in any place, right? Like here's the thing I want to say. When you have folks that you bring in to be Indigenous, like experts or liaisons, or it's really important that you understand that their perspective is theirs. It's their own experience. They cannot speak to the entire existence of Indigenous people across, you know, Turtle Island. It's not possible, and they shouldn't, because that's dangerous. So often I was brought in, and so I should be. I wanted to be at those tables to have the conversations and engage in the political direction around Indigenous issues. But I had to be honest that it's like, I don't know what it's like to be anywhere near Nishigandaga, or I don't know what that lived experience is. But what I can talk about is the urban Indigenous experience. So this is not quite your question. I'm on a tangent, but so that was an interesting kind of like having to marry those two perspectives, because Indigenous people very much, especially like members of nations. So like in Kahnawake, they're very they're members of Kahnawake. They are nationals. That's where that is their nation. You know, they're not necessarily voting in a federal election. It's not their government. So that was an interesting space for me. But what I will say is, when I first became the director and in that role, my role was like a communications tour, being like, you set up all the, where is so and so going today, what are we talking about? And the first thing I did was charter a plane and took the leader to the north. It was the first thing I did. I was like, I'm this is my first big tour. We're going to Attawapiskat. We went to Niskandaga. We went to Winneman Lake. We went to Kingfisher Lake. We went to flying communities. Niskandaga has had a 26-year boil water advisory. That was the first place she was going. So I put my mark on it.
Hi, we have a couple questions online. We'll start with Vian, then we'll go to Natalia, and then we have another question from Audrey that I'll read out. Feel free to unmute yourself, Vian.
Thank you, Ani Bojan Yawen. Thank you, Madeline, for that speech. And please don't ever say sorry for sharing your tears with us. It's appreciated. So I wanted to ask you a question, kind of a little bit related, but maybe not. And I hope maybe you can chime in and then tell me what your thoughts are. So I have 3 kids. I am non-Indigenous, but I'm a very big ally of the Indigenous community. And I live in Toronto, so I take my kids to the Native Child Family Services, and I make sure that they learn on the land-based learning. They're trying to learn Ojibwe language. I wanted to get your thoughts on how can I advocate more for Indigenous language studies within the TDSB community. I've tried to bring it up a couple of times with like a couple of schools in the area, and I was not very, I guess, welcomed to talk about it. But I just wanted to know if you have any thoughts on that, and if I can please maybe get some directions from you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. I appreciate that. I'm going to drink my water. I won't narrate all my activities. I'm not familiar with the TDSB because I'm in Hamilton. What I will say is in Hamilton, there is like a parents and an educators council. It's an Indigenous education circle. I'm part of that. And so for me, that would be the place that would take place. You could potentially, maybe your trustee. I'm trying to think what would make sense for TDSB. You're saying you spoke directly to the schools, but you might want to find out if there are any like reconciliation commitments on at the board level and see where your ask might align with that. And then you have an idea? Okay. They do have an Indigenous lead. Okay. Okay. So Joan is saying that the TDSB has an Indigenous lead who would probably be your best first point of contact.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Natalia, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, people also post some links about TDSB on the chat that we can share later as well. There was a question earlier in the chat talking about the role of religion, or how much religion plays a role in colonization and colonizing education. If you can speak about it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm working on a piece right now, and when I say I'm working on a piece right now, I'm writing. It's really hard to write when you have life, but it is called Your Religion and My Indigeneity, and it is about my grandmother's. My grandmother was very religious. She is a survivor of day school, Indian day school. She went to the mission school. She was Baptist, I believe. And she believed in God until the moment she left us. And her belief in God gave her the strength to leave us at the end of her cancer journey. And so the piece I'm writing is really just trying to reconcile how I live I have a more traditional, like Mohawk traditional approach to life. I'm spiritual. I am not necessarily religious. And how my goals for myself and my children were very much in conflict with my grandmother's experience. And so I think that the church plays a very big role in, obviously, the residential school system and colonization. And a lot of the elders in our communities and a lot of First Nations communities are very religious, in fact. So that is something, you know, I can't speak to next steps, that's for sure, but I do, it is something that is of particular interest to me, and just, and to see how those two things intersect.
We have one more question in the chat. Natalia, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So the question is, when you talked about becoming aware that it was you alone who had Nancy Drew figured out, the one part really struck it with me, as I think this happened during adolescence, early 20s time so much. So the question is, what would you say to young folks realizing this as well?
What would you say to young folks realizing this as well? And Audrey, I see you on camera. If you have anything else to say, feel free to unmute. We can hear you in the room as well.
Hi there, it's Audrey. That was my question. When you were first telling your story, and then the time where you realized, I think you were 16 or somewhere, you realized that it was you alone that had to do this. Your dad wasn't going to give you the answers you needed. And that really resonated with me, with my kids who are adults now. They talk about that now. They're older. They didn't talk about it at that time. But looking back, I can see that's such a significant time in your life of figuring out who you are. So I'm just wondering if you could say, just from your experience, like some advice or some ways to acknowledge that time. And maybe I'm just making up for my own time as a parent where I didn't notice it. But it's a turning point. It's one of the big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first thing I will say is, for me, the realization that I had to figure this out on my own, when I look back on that, I don't look back on that with any bad feelings. Like I really have a perspective now that, like I was, like I had said, is like sometimes people don't have those tools. And I think looking back, it's always easy to look back, but I did have tools and I wanted to find my own tools. And I was also never one to like, I always like was making stuff or figuring things out or rigging things up like physically and then also in my life. So I was kind of, I'm scrappy in that way. And so it was like, okay, I'm not waiting around for anyone. And my advice is always lead with kindness and try and find somebody else's, like meet people where they're at. And so if that's your parents, like your parents are just doing this for the first time. We are all just doing this for the first time. I've never sat in this chair before. You've never sat in that chair before. I've never been a mother to 4 boys before. What is your experience? You've never done that before. And so being patient with ourselves and being patient with those around us and being patient with the work would be my advice.
Yeah, but so kudos on your little library concept. I
Thank
think
you.
that's awesome. Just curious, I guess, yeah, kind of two-part question to this as well. One, since you've launched it, glad to hear that you haven't had any negative
Yeah, sorry, it
reaction.
was a bit dramatic there.
Yeah, but like how has it had positive you know, reactions, and has it changed, we'll say, conversations you've had with neighbors or people in the community, you know, talking about certain books? And also for those that might want to replicate your idea, assuming maybe it's not patented, or people might want to do it in their neighborhoods or communities, like any thoughts, recommendations on that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would love if people did this in their neighborhood. I mean, one of the first things, I mean, Ryan and I are big dreamers. So of course, like before we even put the books in it, we're like, wouldn't it be amazing if this were all over the city? Like, okay, slow down. But yeah, I think that it's like I said, it creates like an accessible entry point for people, right? People, when we talk about reconciliation, like I even don't know, like, well, what is reconciliation? People don't know how to action reconciliation. Like there's this, it's like the government's doing it, right? Schools, you know, institutions, they have an easier approach to it. But as individuals, what am I doing in my house on this street to engage in reconciliation? Well, the library for us was giving people an opportunity. This is how you engage in reconciliation. Reconciliation, or decolonization, which is our preferred word, can happen by reading a book. It can happen by learning about someone's experience that you didn't know about. And so, yeah, our neighbors love it. The community loves it. I've done collab events with local, like there's a local little thrift seller who has a little garage. It doesn't sound as fancy as it's fancy, but and we did an event. We did a pop-up, a beadwork pop-up, and it was an opportunity for folks to come from the neighborhood that love beadwork, but are like, am I allowed? You know, yes. The women and the folks, pardon me, the folks that make beadwork would like you to buy their beadwork. yes, please come and buy their things. So it has sparked many conversations. We've had people at the door like saying, thank you so much for this opportunity. I didn't know about, you know, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I strongly recommend, and it doesn't have to be like a decolonial little library. Like what is your experience that you feel like you want to offer to people, and you know, and allow people to access your family story, your cultural story, or you know, your lived experience. I think that it's a really great a way for people to, you know, engage with because people are shy, right? People are shy. If you're walking down the street with your dog, like I even would be like, oh, am I allowed to take that? But people do, and that's how you get them.
That's not what I was looking for, though. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, okay. So what it is was very, huh?
Said, oh, is he?
Yeah, it's very exciting. You didn't happen to notice him there? Yeah, it's the back. No, I was just gonna say, while we're having exciting moments, maybe Tom wants to come up and just say hello for a second. That's all. Nothing important. Oh, it's okay.
What do you have to say?
Watch Madeline speak today, because I don't get a chance to speak, watch her speak. I get to talk all the time.
Use this because there are nice
Oh.
folks on this.
Well, hello. I came to watch my daughter speak today because I have lots of opportunities to talk to audiences. It's important for me to hear my daughter speak. It is a step to my own identity and understanding her identity and our identity together as Mohawks. So I came here to learn today. You're not going to learn anything from me today. Madeline is my spokesperson today. But hey, Joan, thanks a lot for dragging me up here and.
Well,
Oh no, your phone's scrolling, Joan.
we do have some questions online, Joan, while you're looking. So, okay. Oh, okay. Sounds good. We have, no, for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. So we have one question from Sam. It says, I was wondering, what do you think about decolonizing vaccine and health literacy education? Is it an issue we need to address?
Ay. Where do I go with this one? Because I am not a politician, thank God. I think that, so here's what I will speak about. I will speak about what I know, which is during the pandemic, and this might not answer your question, but this is what I'm going to go with. During the pandemic, when vaccines were mandated, one of the challenges that we saw while I was working in government, well, not in government, official opposition, was obviously vaccine hesitancy within Indigenous communities. As folks may or may not know, I don't know what your entry point is to this conversation, but there is significant healthcare hesitancy within Indigenous, many different communities, but Indigenous communities with forced sterilization and testing that went on in residential schools. So part of addressing that, there was a coalition of like Aboriginal Health and different folks that came together to create literature and create information and information sessions that would be able to reach Indigenous communities that maybe would be more traditionally hesitant to access, the healthcare system. So that's my answer.
We have one more question and then we'll pass it on to Joan. This question is from Cheryl. She says, hi, I'm from Youth Mental Health Canada. We are translating mental wellness workbooks into Indigenous languages. First, excuse me, pardon if I butcher the name, Inuktitut and next Cree. Do you have ideas on how we can involve people in getting funds to get the books printed? And she made an additional comment saying we will be donating digital physical copies to schools, etc.
I guess you could partner with, Era Crafts on Six Nations has their own books that they publish. That might be a partnership that's worth investigating. There's the like Six Nations Polytechnic, like maybe different institute. I guess maybe I'm not understanding the question, but I think looking to Indigenous organizations or institutions that might be interested in having that as.
She also added that they're in Hamilton.
Oh, neighbor. Yeah, so Friendship Center, it just depends. I think, like, if somebody would like copies, they would probably be excited to partner. So, like I said, the Friendship Center, maybe the city, maybe the Board of Ed. I'm not sure who has money anymore. But seriously, I think that that's a brilliant idea. I love to see that. Like I said, I just try and translate books as I read them to my kids. There aren't a lot that I have been able to find books, like children's books in Mohawk. There are a lot of Cree, there are a lot of Anishinaabe Moan, but not a lot of Mohawk. So that's what I'll say. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I'm sorry if I wasn't as helpful as I wish I could have been. Thomas?
Okay. Well, so you know that this is a thing we do. But I've done a little bit extra preparation here. Just can you grab that for me? Thank you. Thank you. And then I'll do this. Okay. So I've done a little bit of extra preparation because you know that we do something, but so thank you for your talk today. From the very beginning, when I realized what you've been doing to reclaim who you are and establish your own identity, I had to write this out because I was worried I was going to cry because I know I'm going to. So there you go. That's why the Kleenex came in. Albeit a partner to an Anishinaabe man, which has beautiful symmetry. We know. I knew how we needed to hear your experience. It's one thing for me because I'm a 60 scoop person, but I think they're kind of a little bit bored about hearing about the court case and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, then I tell somebody and they go, you did what? I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's just kind of different and it's important and everybody's story is important. So this is just it's going to feel so weird for you because I wasn't reading your mind, I swear. I do know what it's like to try and establish yourself in a community when you feel like you're not really entirely part of it. Do you feel like you belong? So you do belong. Where is Marilyn? Is she in here somewhere? Okay, welcome to the front. You do belong, not to just the Indigenous community, but to our community here at NYCH, just by accident with Ryan. I mean, but now you're, you all do. I'm sure you can agree that many of those feelings we hold that we have in common are with the newcomer experience. It's been a lonely road. Now, normally I would get somebody from here to do this, but it's special, so I'm doing it because we have a rule about skirts being presented by members of the community. Okay, so yes, Sam. So in a perfect world, there'd be more of us, but your family was going to be here anyway, so we decided we'd do it today instead of coming over to your house. I've done a little bit of research over time about ribbon skirts. They carry stories. I'm trying to go fast so Sam doesn't hear. Traditions and connections to our ancestors. They represent strength, resilience, and the beauty of our women. What I love about the skirts is you see someone wearing one, it's instant solidarity. You don't even have to say your name or where you're from. We just know we belong to one another and community. At conferences, we gravitate to one another. I have actually gotten in an elevator with women wearing skirts, and by the time we hit the ground floor, we're laughing with each other. I got one such time I got off the ground floor and they went one way and I was going the other way to grab a coffee before going to the convention center. They yelled at me and said, "Where are you going? Come on, it's this way." So we belong to a sisterhood immediately. There's traditions everywhere about the skirts. Kathy Smoke would say that the first ribbon skirt must be gifted to you by a family member and then go crazy. On my home res, I asked around and people don't really know where they came from. They think about the very past. At one point, this was going to be my thesis, and I was trying to do a pretty good amount of research. What I found is there are no rules. These are so new, really, that we haven't established them yet. So we get to set our own traditions. For 60 Scoop people, we didn't get to experience these things. And so we didn't know if we were allowed to have one, wear one. Did it have to be for ceremony only? Are we allowed? The answers, of course, are yes, if you like, and absolutely. In fact, we are to embrace them among the culture that we weren't taught for whatever reason. I don't know if I have to keep going on and on, do I? No? Okay, so just talking about how Kim Anderson sees it and how Leanne Simpson sort of says, you know what, you can wear a skirt, don't wear a skirt, whichever you like. But I mean, the protocols are the fastest way and easiest way to feel like you belong. So wearing a skirt is one of them. Wear a long skirt, walk in a circle, don't blow in the sage, she says. So it also represents your teepee, right? So it's like a teepee form, it's like a teepee shape. So anything that goes on in your teepee, like your home, is up to you. So this is your armor. This is your, thing. Edna Manitowabi, Ryan's going to say, I know her. Is he? Oh, because Ryan. Okay, Ryan knows everybody. He always says this to me. Says that you need to have your skirt tickling the ground so Mother Earth knows who is walking on her. So 60 Scoop sisters have taken these teachings and rolled them into the practice at elders' suggestions of presenting skirts as a way of welcoming one another home. So this skirt was created with love, intention, and respect. Each ribbon carries a meaning, whether you wear it for ceremony, celebration, or simply to feel connected to your roots. Know that it holds the power of those who came before us. When wearing a skirt, you're embracing your teaching, strength, and pride of our shared heritage. It's a reminder of the sacred role you play in your family, your community, and also to the world. It's also a symbol of honor, identity, and the beauty that exists within you. May it remind you of your strength and love that surrounds you, and may it always carry you with dignity, respect, and pride wherever you go. So we offer this as a gift to you from the heart, and we hope it brings you joy, empowerment, and connection. And I really, really hope it fits, and if it doesn't, it's your husband's fault. Right, so it's a bit different. I think it's gonna be better.
I don't know if people know this about Joan.
Oh,
but she's
jeez.
a certified seamstress and she worked on Broadway. And she's good at her craft and what she does.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty. I hope it fits. Yeah, I hope. It's gorgeous. So each, so people don't have to hear, but each rose, there's one for each person in the family, you know how I like to be. Okay, and then I think I can turn the microphone off. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we'll have to see if it fits. I think it's very pretty. Ryan has, well, it's Ryan, it matches Ryan's shirt. Yes. So, I mean, and Ryan told me I had to do that. I said, I don't want you to be too matchy-matchy. He said, we like matchy-matchy. I said, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. Gorgeous. It's really gorgeous. Oh, good. I'm glad. Really. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so, Sage, can you, Josh, do you want to wrap up? Sure. Okay.
No, that's fine. Well, thank you so much for today. It's Yeah, it's been very inspirational to hear you speak and you know, share your lived experience with us and the amazing work that you continue to do. So on behalf of George Brown and I guess the North York Community House, again, thank you so much and thank you for joining us today. Yeah.